Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back thousands of years into the scorching heat and endless sands of the ancient Silk Road, setting out on a journey that tested even the toughest traders in human history. Imagine standing at the edge of Chang'an, the bustling capital of Tang Dynasty China, watching endless lines of heavy pack animals stretch toward a horizon that seems to melt into shimmering heat waves. You are about to embark on a 4,000-mile trek across jagged mountains, shifting dunes, and barren plains, where the dust settles so thick on your skin that you practically become part of the landscape itself. Frankly, you probably won't survive this journey without losing a shoe, your temper, or at least a few layers of skin to the unrelenting desert wind. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you are tuning in tonight, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is over on your side of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the western market of Chang'an early in the morning, long before the sun has fully cleared the city walls. All around you, the air is dense with the smell of roasting sesame, damp straw, unwashed wool, and the unmistakable pungent musk of hundreds of camels waiting to be loaded. The noise is almost overwhelming, a chaotic symphony of foreign tongues, bargaining merchants, clinking bronze coins, and the heavy thud of wooden crates hitting the dirt ground. You are wearing a thick linen tunic that already feels too warm, but experienced traders warn you that the desert nights will make you wish for 3 more layers. As part of this merchant caravan, your job isn't just to walk, it is to keep thousands of pounds of precious silk, jade, and spices safe from dust, rain, thieves, and sheer bad luck. You watch an old merchant meticulously inspect a bolt of woven silk. Chang'an is the eastern terminus of the greatest trading network the world has ever known, a massive artery connecting imperial China to Central Asia, Persia, and eventually the distant shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Millions of yards of silk pass through these gates, functioning not just as a luxury fabric for foreign nobles, but as an actual form of official currency alongside copper cash. Historians still argue whether the Chinese government intentionally overissued silk to pay border troops, or if the sheer market demand simply turned fabric into the ancient world's most reliable banknote. Either way, you are essentially guarding a walking mountain of cash wrapped in woven thread. Beside the silk bales sit heavy pottery jars filled with fermented soybean paste and dried mutton cakes, your primary sustenance for the weeks ahead. You notice one of the junior traders applying a thick yellow ointment made from crushed pig fat, sulfur, and ground rhubarb root to his face and neck. It looks ridiculous, smells marginally worse than the camel pen, and leaves a sticky residue that instantly catches every floating particle of dirt, but it is the premier skin protection remedy of the 8th century. Without it, the dry desert air will crack your lips until they bleed before you even cross the provincial border. You hesitantly dab a little under your nose, instantly regretting your life choices as the sulfur fumes clear your sinuses with aggressive efficiency. The caravan leader, a weathered Sogdian man with a greying beard and sharp blue eyes, shouts a command in a dialect you barely grasp. The massive wooden gates open with a deep, echoing groan that seems to shake the gravel beneath your leather sandals. The line begins to move. Dust rises immediately, forming a golden halo in the early morning sunlight that makes the whole scene look almost peaceful, though your lungs tell a very different story as you take your first dusty breath of the long road ahead. The golden dust of Chang'an barely has time to settle before you are confronted with your primary partners for the next few thousand miles, Bactrian camels. Unlike their single-humped Arabian cousins, these sturdy Central Asian beasts sport 2 massive floppy humps of dense fat and thick coats of woolly hair that shed in ragged, unsightly clumps as the season warms. They look remarkably grumpy, and frankly, who can blame them? Your task for the next 2 hours is to load roughly 400 pounds of tightly packed silk bolts and dried provisions onto a creature that actively hates your presence. Balancing a camel's load is a delicate art, rooted in rigorous physics and a fair amount of prayer. The wooden saddle frame sits snugly between the 2 humps, and every bale of cargo must be weighed with excruciating precision using heavy iron handheld scales. If one side weighs even 3 pounds more than the other, the saddle will slowly shift during a long day of walking, galling the camel's back into a raw, infected sore and eventually sending 400 pounds of expensive Chinese export goods crashing into the gravel. You haul a heavy hemp rope tight, grunting with effort, while the camel turns its long neck around and lets out a guttural, gurgling roar that sounds remarkably like a rusty water pipe bursting. To add insult to injury, it belches a cloud of half-digested thorny scrub right into your face. Historians still argue whether the invention of the double-humped camel's specialized wooden pack saddle occurred first among northern nomadic tribes or within the settled oases of the Tarim Basin. What remains undisputed is that without this specific biological and mechanical combination, large-scale overland trade across the brutal Gobi and Taklamakan deserts would have been utterly impossible. The Bactrian camel is built like an ancient all-terrain vehicle, capable of drinking 30 gallons of salty water in 10 minutes, closing its nostrils against blinding dust storms and marching for days on a diet of bitter desert shrubs that would poison a horse. While the camels are undeniably the heavy lifters, the caravan also relies on small, shaggy Mongolian horses and hardy donkeys. To keep these smaller animals from collapsing under the strain of carrying heavy water skins, handlers often resort to an obscure fringe practice recorded by ancient travelers, smearing the animal's nostrils with a pungent mixture of vinegar and crushed garlic. Supposedly, the sharp scent keeps the animals alert and clears their airways of fine silt, though it leaves the entire column smelling like a mobile salad dressing factory drifting across the wilderness. By the time the last knot is tied and the last camel stands up with a creaking groan of joints, sweat is pouring down your neck, gluing the fine desert dust to your skin like a layer of coarse sandpaper. You wipe your brow with the sleeve of your tunic, leaving a dark smudge of mud across your forehead. The caravan leader blows a sharp blast on a brass horn. The iron bells attached to the led camel's harness begin their rhythmic clank, 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 and the slow, hypnotic march into the vast unknown resumes. The further west you trek, the more the soft green hills of central China give way to the stark, jagged red sandstone of the Turpan Basin, where the famous flaming mountains rise up like frozen waves of fire. The heat here doesn't just warm you, it presses down on your shoulders like a physical weight, baking the hard-packed earth until heat shimmers make the distant horizon bend and warp. Even in the middle of this blistering furnace, you are forced to wear long, heavy wool or thick linen robes. Stripping down to your undergarments might seem like a brilliant modern idea, but the fierce, dust-laden wind would strip the moisture from your skin in minutes, leaving you severely dehydrated before noon. As you trudge along the narrow gravel tracks, the sun beats down relentlessly, heating the air to temperatures that could bake bread on a flat rock. Every step kicks up a fine reddish powder that settles inside your boots, turning your sweat into a gritty paste that chafes with every stride. To survive the heat, you and your fellow travelers adopt a slow, deliberate march known as the desert stride, a low-impact, rhythmic walk that conserves vital energy and minimizes perspiration. You pull a wide-brimmed woven straw hat low over your eyes, keeping your chin tucked down to avoid the scorching glare reflecting off the pale desert floor. Or if water scarcity meant they had to risk daytime marches to reach the next well before their supply skins ran dry. What is certain is that passing through this region required impeccable timing. Straying even a few miles off the established trail could lead a caravan into vast salt flats, where surface crusts easily broke under a camel's weight, trapping animals in soft boiling mud beneath. To cope with the unbearable dryness, traders relied on a rather strange fringe survival technique passed down through generations of Silk Road guides, sucking on smooth, polished agate stones carried in their mouths. The cool, non-porous river stone stimulated saliva production, keeping the throat from closing up with dry dust when drinking water was strictly rationed to a few precious gulps at sunset. You pop a small, rounded pebble into your mouth, feeling its cold surface against your tongue. It feels slightly ridiculous, but as the dry air threatens to parch your mouth into sandpaper, you realize the ancient trick actually works, giving you just enough moisture to keep moving forward. By mid-afternoon, the wind picks up, whistling through the narrow canyons and carrying with it a dry, static hiss. The red cliffs seem to glow in the late sun, casting long, dramatic shadows across the canyon floor. You keep your eyes fixed on the tail of the camel directly ahead of you, watching its rhythm, listening to the monotonous chiming of its brass bell, and focusing entirely on placing one dusty boot in front of the other as the heat slowly begins to wane. The wind through the red canyons doesn't just bring heat, it brings fine airborne silt that finds its way into every crease of your skin and every corner of your eyes. Dust blindness is a constant agonizing threat on the Silk Road, where tiny grains of quartz and dried alkali scratch against delicate corneas with every blink. To protect your vision, you untie a strip of woven horsehair mesh from your belt, an early precursor to modern sunglasses. Bound across your face with leather thongs, the dark, tightly woven hair cuts down the blinding solar glare while filtering out the largest dust particles, leaving you looking like a bizarre medieval insect tramping across the dunes. When horsehair goggles fail and the sand inevitably penetrates your eyelids, the caravan turns to its collection of questionable apothecary remedies. Straying even a few miles off the established trail could lead a caravan into vast salt flats where surface crusts easily broke under a camel's weight, trapping animals in soft, boiling mud beneath. To cope with the unbearable dryness, traders relied on a rather strange fringe survival technique passed down through generations of Silk Road guides, sucking on smooth, polished agate stones carried in their mouths. You watch a merchant sit by a rock, wincing as a fellow traveler uses a small silver spoon to drop a sticky, cool substance directly into his bloodshot eyes. This popular relief salve is made from clarified butter mixed with crushed lapis lazuli powder, zinc oxide, and a splash of sour milk. While the zinc actually possesses genuine antiseptic properties, the thought of smearing ancient dairy product into an open eye scratch is enough to make anyone exercise extreme caution around wind gusts. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of mineral-based eye salves along Central Asian trade routes was derived primarily from Greco-Roman medical texts brought east by Alexander the Great's descendants, or developed independently by Persian and Chinese physicians. Regardless of its origin, medical knowledge was as valuable a commodity on the Silk Road as raw silk or precious spices, with remedies constantly traded, adapted, and tested under the harshest environmental conditions. For severe inflammation, however, drivers often resorted to a far more fringe, esoteric practice recorded in ancient Sogdian trade letters, applying fresh, warm blood drawn from a camel's ear vein directly to the sufferer's eyelids. The protein-rich fluid was believed to cool the internal fire caused by desert dust, though most sensible travelers preferred to stick with the butter and zinc ointment whenever possible. You carefully wipe the edge of your horsehair mask, determined not to let a single grain of dirt force you into trying the camel blood cure. As the sun descends lower, casting orange rays across the dunes, the wind gradually dies down, leaving the dust hanging in the air like a shimmering curtain. Your eyes burn, your throat tastes like copper and dried earth, but the horsehair shield has done its job. You can still see the long shadow of the caravan stretching out across the sand, guiding you toward the distant silhouette of an oasis outpost where water awaits. As the last light of dusk fades from the horizon, the silhouette of a massive mud-brick fortress emerges from the desert gloom, a caravanserai. These fortified roadside inns are scattered every 20 to 30 miles along the main Silk Road routes, positioned roughly one day's march apart for a loaded camel column. The thick outer walls are built from sun-dried clay and straw, offering vital protection against both nocturnal desert winds and opportunistic bandit bands that lurk along unpatrolled stretches of the trail. You pass through the towering wooden gates into a grand open courtyard surrounded by dozens of small archways and vaulted storage rooms. The central courtyard is a chaotic, vibrant melting pot of cultures, languages, and smells. Camels are untied and kneel in long rows, letting out deep sighs of relief as their heavy wooden saddle frames are finally hoisted off their sweaty backs. In the center of the yard sits a deep stone well, around which dozens of exhausted travelers gather with leather buckets and bronze jugs. You queue up, waiting your turn to draw up water that has been filtered through layers of desert sand and underground clay channels known as carrés. The water is lukewarm, slightly brackish, and tastes distinctly of limestone and damp earth, but as you gulp it down, it feels like the greatest luxury on earth. Historians still argue whether these elaborate caravanserai systems were maintained primarily through royal state subsidies to boost imperial tax revenues from trade or operated as profitable private franchises run by wealthy local merchant guilds. What is beyond doubt is that they served as the internet of the ancient world. Sitting on coarse woven wool rugs in the courtyard, you listen to news carried from thousands of miles away, political coups in Persia, currency devaluations in Constantinople, and river floods in northern China are discussed in hushed tones over cups of steaming tea. Alongside the news, travelers share strange local customs and practical tips for the road ahead. One older Bactrian trader pulls out a small cloth pouch containing dried, salty goat cheese curds, a staple known as kurt. He demonstrates a fringe, highly effective trick for keeping well water fresh during long desert stretches, dropping a few hard chunks of this fermented sun-dried cheese directly into leather water skins. The acidity and high salt content help retard bacterial growth in the stagnant water, though it leaves every drink tasting like liquid goat barn. You find a quiet corner in one of the communal brick alcoves and unroll your sleeping mat on the cool stone floor. The air inside the caravanserai is remarkably cooler than the baking desert outside, shielded by feet of dense adobe wall. Outside, the night sky is ablaze with millions of sharp, bright stars, completely untouched by modern city lights. The rhythmic chewing of dozens of resting camels and the soft murmur of foreign tongues fade into a peaceful background hum as you close your eyes, letting the heavy fatigue of the day take over. Morning arrives inside the caravanserai, not with a gentle alarm, but with the sharp scent of roasting cumin, the clatter of bronze cooking pots, and the hushed, tense murmur of traders engaging in the delicate art of illicit smuggling. While silk and jade flow openly along these highways under imperial seals, the most valuable cargo on the Silk Road is often the kind that is strictly forbidden to cross national borders. You sit against a sun-warmed clay wall, sipping warm millet porridge, while watching a pair of travelling monks carefully inspect the hollowed-out interiors of their thick bamboo walking sticks. For centuries, the Chinese imperial court held an absolute, fiercely guarded monopoly on silk production, enforcing immediate execution for anyone caught trying to export living silkworms or mulberry seeds out of the empire. Despite these lethal penalties, the secret eventually leaked west into Central Asia and the Byzantine Empire through brilliant acts of ancient industrial espionage. According to famous historical accounts, eggs of the Bombyx mori moth were smuggled across thousands of miles, hidden inside hollowed bamboo canes, or concealed within the elaborate towering hairstyles of a Chinese princess marrying a foreign king. Historians still argue whether these dramatic smuggling legends represent genuine individual covert operations or simply romanticized cover stories created to hide steady, informal trade leakages along nomadic border zones. Regardless of the exact truth, the tension surrounding contraband inspections at frontier outposts was intensely real. Every caravan reaching a border station faced strict searches by imperial customs officials who poked iron rods into silk bales and scrutinized personal luggage for illegal seeds, iron weapons, or unregistered gold bullion. To bypass these strict border checks, merchants resorted to remarkably creative fringe smuggling methods. A common trick among Central Asian traders was stitching small packets of rare botanical seeds or silkworm eggs inside the thick double-layered leather soles of their worn walking boots, or hiding fine gold dust inside sealed, hollowed-out wooden camel bells where no customs guard would think to look. You watch one seasoned merchant lightly shake a heavy brass bell attached to his lead animal, giving you a subtle, knowing wink as the internal clapper produces a dull, metallic thud rather than a clear ring. Once past the guard stations, these high-risk items commanded fortunes in foreign markets, capable of turning an ordinary merchant into a wealthy noble overnight. You finish your breakfast, strap your leather pack securely back onto your shoulders, and fall back into line as the caravan files out of the caravanserai gates, leaving the relative safety of the oasis behind to face the soaring, treacherous mountain barriers ahead. Leaving the flat desert floor behind, the caravan begins its agonizing ascent into the Pamir Mountains, a towering wall of rock and ice, known to ancient traders as the roof of the world, or the Congling. Onion ranges, named for the pungent wild onions that carpet its lower valleys. Here, the suffocating heat of the desert is instantly replaced by thin, freezing air that burns your lungs with every breath. The broad dirt tracks narrow into treacherous windswept ledges carved directly into sheer granite cliffs, where a single misstep means plunging thousands of feet into icy river gorges below. Navigating these high-altitude passes with hundreds of heavily laden pack animals is a nightmare of logistics and nerve. Camels, designed by nature for soft desert sands, struggle immensely on smooth, icy rock faces. Their wide, padded feet slip and slide over frozen patches, sending tremors of panic through the entire line. You walk alongside the animals, holding a heavy wooden pole tipped with iron to brace yourself against sudden gusts of alpine wind that threaten to blow you clean off the cliff edge. The silence of the high peaks is broken only by the howls of the icy gale, the sharp crack of snapping ice, and the heavy, ragged gasps of men and beasts suffocating in the oxygen-depleted air. Historians still argue whether ancient Silk Road travelers suffered more deaths from mountain sickness and sudden blizzards in the Pamir and Hindu Kush ranges, or from heat exhaustion and dehydration in the lowland deserts. Altitude sickness, known back then as headache mountain syndrome, was often attributed by ancient travelers to toxic vapors released by copper mines or evil spirits haunting the high peaks, leaving merchants dizzy, nauseous, and disoriented as they fought their way over 12,000-foot passes. To combat the lethal cold and thin air, mountain guides employed a fringe, unusual survival technique recorded in Persian and Chinese travel logs, wrapping the legs of both men and pack animals in thick strips of raw, oiled sheepskin and forcing animals to ingest small balls of crushed garlic mixed with lard. The garlic was believed to thin the blood and improve circulation in cold limbs, while the lard provided dense calories to keep the working animals from collapsing into hypothermic shock on the trail. You pull your thick sheepskin coat tighter around your chest, breathing through a wool scarf as you help coax a terrified camel past an ice-covered ledge. By late afternoon, the caravan manages to squeeze through the highest notch of the pass, beginning its slow, careful descent toward the lower valleys. Your hands are numb, your face is frostbitten and raw from the biting wind, but as you look down at the vast green valleys of Fergana stretching out below, you know the deadliest physical barrier of the entire journey is finally behind you. Descending from the icy heights of the Pamirs, the landscape flattens into the lush foothills of Sogdia, but new dangers quickly take the place of thin air and frozen ledges. This fertile borderland is a patchwork of squabbling fiefdoms, petty warlords, and opportunistic nomadic raiders who view passing caravans as walking treasuries ripe for the picking. As you guide your pack animals along the dusty river trails, the peaceful silence of the road is suddenly broken by the thud of horse hooves. A dozen mounted warriors clad in iron-scale armor and carrying sharp composite bows emerge from a grove of poplars to block the path. This isn't a battle. It's a business transaction. Safe passage along the Silk Road is rarely guaranteed by imperial armies, requiring merchants to master the art of aggressive diplomatic bribery. The caravan leader calmly steps forward, holding his hands open to show he carries no weapons. Negotiation is an intricate dance of ego, patience, and precise valuation. Instead of copper coins, which are too heavy to transport in large quantities, the primary currency used to pay off regional tolls and buy protection from local bandits is raw silk bolts, high-grade tea bricks, and polished glass beads imported from the West. Historians still argue whether these widespread roadside toll systems functioned as a legitimate form of medieval state taxation that funded local road maintenance, or were simply legalized protection rackets run by regional elites. What is clear is that a merchant had to calculate toll costs into his profit margins long before leaving home. Pay too little, and your caravan might be quietly ambushed 5 miles down the trail. Pay too much, and you would arrive at the trading markets penniless after surviving months of brutal physical hardship. To safeguard their most valuable items from greedy toll collectors who demanded exorbitant cuts, caravans relied on clever, fringe concealment tactics. High-value gems, raw opium, and gold coins were often sewn directly inside the thick, double-layered woolen blankets used to cushion the pack saddles on camels' backs, a spot few inspectors cared to search thoroughly due to the sheer heat and foul smell of the animals' sweaty hides. You watch with suppressed amusement as an arrogant border guard leans against a camel's saddle to tally silk bolts, completely unaware that his elbow is resting directly on thousands of gold coins tucked inside the sweat-soaked felt padding beneath him. After 2 long hours of tense haggling, dramatic hand gestures, and 3 bolts of blue silk changing hands, the chieftain finally nods in approval. He whistles to his men, who wheel their horses around and clear the road. The caravan leader gives a subtle sigh of relief, adjusts his hat, and signals the column to move forward before the guards change their minds. The sun sinks low over the rolling steppe, painting the horizon in deep hues of purple and gold as the caravan makes camp for the night. Far from the safety of caravanserai walls, evening on the open trail demands a strict, disciplined routine to keep both men and beasts alive. The camels are arranged in a massive, tight circle, with their heads facing inward, creating a natural windbreak and an improvised perimeter wall against nighttime predators and stealthy thieves. In the center of this living ring, small campfires begin to crackle, casting a warm, flickering light across tired, dust-streaked faces. Dinner on the trail is simple, rugged, and deeply comforting. After 12 hours of relentless marching, You sit on a folded wool blanket beside an iron tripod kettle, watching a thick stew bubble over dried camel dung fuel. The meal consists of hard, twice-baked flatbread, softened in a savoury broth of dried mutton, wild mountain garlic, crushed lentils, and a precious pinch of coarse sea salt. Simple as it is, the hot food revives your spirits, washing away the bitter taste of mountain dust and filling the chilly night air with the rich, mouth-watering aroma of roasted meat and spices. Historians still argue whether the invention of portable, long-lasting dried foods like hardtack flatbread and salted meat paste originated among northern nomadic tribes or settled agricultural societies along the Silk Road. Regardless of its true origin, this simple culinary technology was the literal fuel that powered trans-Eurasian trade, allowing human beings to cross thousands of miles of uninhabited wilderness without starving. While eating, travelers unwind with gentle entertainment, sharing folklore, playing bone dice, or playing small stringed instruments like the pipa or short-necked lute. One fringe, cozy nighttime habit recorded by travelers along these routes was the widespread use of warm, salted sheep's milk tea infused with dried ginger slices before bed. The warm fat in the milk coated dry, desert-chafed throats, while the ginger warmed the body from the inside out against the dropping nighttime temperatures. You wrap your fingers around a clay cup of the steaming, salty brew, feeling its soothing heat melt away the deep physical aches settled in your muscles. Above you, the night sky opens into a breathtaking canopy of countless shining stars, so clear and bright that the Milky Way looks like a river of spilled milk stretched across the dark velvet void. The gentle hum of soft conversations in Persian, Chinese, and Sogdian, punctuated by the rhythmic, contented chewing of cud from the surrounding ring of resting camels, lulls your mind into a peaceful state. Pulling your thick sheepskin cloak up to your chin, you lay your head on your travel pack, letting the quiet rhythm of the desert night rock you into a deep, dreamless sleep. Dawn breaks across the horizon in a gentle wash of soft amber and pale violet, signaling the final leg of your long journey. After months of trudging through baking salt flats, treacherous mountain passes, and wind-swept steppes, a breathtaking sight appears on the horizon. The majestic turquoise-tiled domes and soaring minarets of Samarkand. Nestled in the fertile valley of the Zarafshan River, this legendary oasis city stands as the shining jewel of the Silk Road, a bustling, cosmopolitan metropolis where the cultures of East and West meet, trade, and flourish. As the caravan approaches the grand city gates, the sharp, dry silence of the desert gives way to a vibrant tapestry of sounds and scents. The air grows thick with the irresistible aromas of freshly baked flatbread, drawn from clay tandoor ovens, sweet melons, roasting lamb kebabs, and aromatic cloves. You pass through the towering archways into the heart of Samarkand's gilded bazaars, where sprawling vaulted arcades stretch as far as the eye can see. Here, Chinese silk is exchanged for Persian carpets, Roman glassware, Indian spices, and Siberian furs in a dazzling display of ancient global commerce. Historians still argue whether Samarkand's rapid rise as the preeminent trade hub of Central Asia was due primarily to its unmatched geographical location at the crossroads of major trade routes, or the exceptional diplomatic and mercantile savvy of its native Sogdian population. What remains undeniable is that stepping into its lively markets felt like entering the center of the world, a place where virtually every language, religion, and luxury item on Earth converged under one roof. To celebrate surviving the perilous crossing, weary merchants often indulged in a rather unusual fringe post-journey ritual unique to the region, visiting the famous domed public bathhouses, or hammams, for an intense scraping treatment using pulverized pomegranate rinds and almond paste. This fragrant, abrasive scrub stripped away months of built-up desert grime and dead skin, leaving travelers feeling entirely reborn after their brutal ordeal on the trail. You look down at your dusty boots, battered clothes, and sun-darkened hands, eager to wash away the road and enjoy a long, well-deserved rest in the cool shade of the city's gardens. The heavy pack frames are finally lifted from the camels, the silk bolts are safely stored in secure brick warehouses, and the long, grueling march across Asia comes to a peaceful end. You take a deep, satisfying breath of the fragrant, cool city air, knowing that you have conquered one of the greatest and most dangerous highways in human history. Now, as our journey along the ancient Silk Road comes to a close, let the soft rhythm of your breathing slow down. The long, dusty trails are behind you, the heavy iron bells have gone quiet, and the resting camels lie peaceful under the starlit desert sky. Feel the gentle warmth of your bed around you, safe and secure, far away from the harsh winds and steep mountain passes. Your long journey is complete, and there is nothing left for you to do tonight except rest. Let your body grow heavy, sink deeper into your mattress, and allow your mind to drift peacefully into the quiet stillness of the night. Close your eyes, let go of the day, and sink into a deep, restful sleep.